7 of the biggest canned tuna brands in America. We're breaking down all 7. Which ones have a real federal criminal record, which ones have a supply chain nobody can actually verify, and the 2 that came through clean enough to actually recommend. By the end of this, you'll know exactly which cans to put back on the shelf, and exactly which ones are worth the extra dollar. If you eat canned tuna, for the protein, the omega-3s, the price, hit subscribe now, because you're going to want the full list, not just the headline. Number 7. Genova. Let's start with the one that looks the most expensive on the shelf. Genova. Olive oil packing, Italian name, sitting slightly above everything else, and the price tag matches that positioning. Genova is owned by Bolton Food, a large Italian-based seafood processing company. That ownership is real. What's not backed up anywhere on the label is the implication that comes with it, that the fish inside was caught and processed under some kind of small batch, Mediterranean, artisan standard that justifies the markup. Genova doesn't disclose exactly where its tuna is caught or processed, and it doesn't publish independent third-party species verification results for consumers to check. Some reports and critics of the premium tuna category have alleged that olive oil packed and old world branding create a quality expectation the supply chain doesn't clearly document one way or the other. That's a fair thing to flag, but it's not the same as a confirmed lab finding on this specific product, and we're not going to pretend it is. The olive oil itself is worth a separate flag. Its grade and origin aren't disclosed on the can either. And olive oil fraud, cheaper oils sold under the olive oil label, is one of the most well-documented adulteration problems in the global food industry generally. That's a real, general risk category. Whether it applies to what's in a Genova can specifically isn't something this can tells you. If the Italian name doesn't guarantee anything you can verify, what about the Target quality store brand next to it? Number 6. Market Pantry Retailer Accountability Structure. Market Pantry is Target's private label. And here's the structural fact that matters more than any single test result. Target doesn't fish. Target doesn't run processing facilities. Target designs the label and awards a supply contract, and that contract can go to a different supplier next quarter based on price. There's no named fishery disclosed on the label, no Marine Stewardship Council certification, no independent published species verification results for the consumer to check. That's not an accusation of fraud, it's simply what's absent. The label meets the legal minimum required to sell canned tuna in the US, and that minimum, on its own, doesn't tell you which species is actually in the can or where it came from. Some critics of private label seafood argue that this kind of anonymous, rotating supply chain makes substitution risk structurally harder to catch than it is for a brand with a named, fixed supplier. That's a reasonable structural concern, but it's a general critique of the category, not a documented test result on this specific product. If store brands don't tell you much, does the country's biggest retailer do any better? Number 5. Great value. Great value is the budget option, and the reasoning for buying it is completely sound. Tuna is one of the most affordable proteins available, and stretching a grocery budget is a legitimate priority. The same structural gap applies here though. Walmart doesn't own fishing vessels or processing plants. It awards contracts to whoever can deliver the lowest cost per unit while meeting the federal minimum. No named fishery required, no independent species testing required, no mercury disclosure beyond what the FDA already mandates category-wide. And because the supply contract can rotate to a new manufacturer from one quarter to the next, the sourcing standards behind an identical-looking can change without any visible signal to the shopper. Some industry critics and consumer advocates have raised concerns that private label seafood, generally, carries more substitution risk than named, branded product lines. Again, a real and worth-knowing structural argument, not a lab result specific to this can. Now here's where this stops being about vague sourcing gaps and starts being about a real, documented scandal. Quick gut check before we get into the 3 biggest names in the category. Which one of these surprised you more so far? The store brands or what's coming next? Drop it in the comments, because the next 3 brands are where this investigation gets a lot more concrete. Number 4. Chicken of the Sea. Chicken of the Sea has had that mermaid on the can since 1914. For a lot of families, it's not a brand anymore. It's just a fixture, something that's always been there. Here's what's actually behind it. Chicken of the Sea is owned by Thai Union, one of the largest seafood companies in the world. And Thai Union was directly named in the Associated Press's landmark Seafood from Slaves investigation, the same investigation that won the 2016 Pulitzer Prize for Public Service. AP reporters traced slave-caught and forced labor-tainted seafood through Thai supply chains, and Thai Union publicly acknowledged the findings, confirmed a supplier tied to forced labor had entered its supply chain, and said it terminated that supplier. That's not an alleged connection. That's Thai Union's own public statement responding to a Pulitzer-winning investigation. Since then, Thai Union has joined sustainability coalitions and made public reform commitments. Whether those reforms have fully closed the gap on a fishing supply chain this large is something outside auditors and reporters continue to examine. That ongoing scrutiny is fair to mention, but it's a different, softer claim than saying the problem is unresolved today, and we're not going to state that as settled fact. If that's what's behind the mermaid, what's behind the 3 brands that were actually competing against each other for your grocery money? Number 3, Bumble Bee. Bumble Bee's former CEO, Christopher Leshevsky, was convicted at trial in December 2019 and sentenced to 40 months in federal prison for leading a price-fixing conspiracy with StarKist and Chicken of the Sea. This isn't a settlement or a fine the company just paid and moved past. A federal jury convicted him personally, and a judge sent him to prison for it. Bumble Bee itself had pled guilty in 2017 and paid a $25 million fine. The company filed for bankruptcy and was restructured under new private equity ownership afterward. Here's the fair test for whether that restructuring changed anything that matters to a shopper. What's verifiably different in how the product is sourced and tested today? Bumble Bee's standard product lines still don't carry a published, independent, third-party species verification program, and there's still no named fishery on the standard label. That's a real, checkable gap. Not a new lab finding, just the same transparency gap that existed before the conviction, still present after it. And then there's the brand with the cartoon mascot, and the biggest fine of all 3. Number 2, StarKist. StarKist pled guilty to a felony price-fixing charge and, in September 2019, was ordered to pay a $100 million fine, the statutory maximum, for conspiring with Bumble Bee and Chicken of the Sea to fix canned tuna prices from roughly 2011 to 2013. The Justice Department's Antitrust Division called it exactly what it was, a conspiracy that inflated the price of a grocery staple millions of families rely on. Beyond the price-fixing case, there have been broader concerns, raised by ocean conservation researchers and seafood fraud studies over the years, about species substitution and mislabeling across the canned tuna category generally, and about mercury levels in some tuna varieties testing above FDA advisory thresholds in independent sampling. Those are real, ongoing concerns in the tuna category as a whole. Whether a specific StarKist can on your specific shelf reflects either of those problems, the source it points to confirms. So take that as worth knowing about the category, not proven about this product. Now, one more brand that doesn't fit the pattern at all. Not because it's bad, because of what its own marketing leaves out. Number 1, Safe Catch ingredient/marker specific. Sodium Safe Catch built its whole identity around one real, verifiable promise. Every individual fish is mercury tested before it goes into a can, not just a batch sample. That's genuinely the strongest consumer safety commitment in this category, and it's a big part of why the brand markets directly to pregnant women and people in cancer treatment, populations for whom mercury exposure is a serious, immediate concern, not an abstract one. Here's the gap worth knowing about. That mercury testing trust seems to carry over in a lot of shoppers' minds to the rest of the nutrition label, including sodium. For pregnant women managing blood pressure or cancer patients managing treatment side effects, sodium intake is a real, relevant concern, and it's not the headline of Safe Catch's marketing the way the mercury promise is. The sodium content is disclosed on the label. It's just not emphasized the way the mercury claim is. If you or someone you're buying this for is managing sodium intake, that's a reason to read the full nutrition panel, not just the front of can promise. 2 brands made it through this whole investigation clean. Here's what's actually worth putting in your cart. Trustworthy picks, American Tuna. American Tuna is U.S. Pacific Coast albacore, caught by American fishing families and processed domestically under U.S. regulatory oversight. It's family-owned, it hasn't been acquired by a larger seafood conglomerate, and its supply chain is about as short and traceable as this category gets. Boat to processor, no multi-country brokering in between. It costs more than anything else on this list, and it's not on every shelf, mostly online and specialty retailers, but if you can find it, the traceability is real and verifiable. Wild Planet, top pick. Wild Planet's albacore is pole and line caught, the most selective commercial method available, one fish at a time, with no bycatch mixing other species into the same catch. The label is 2 ingredients: albacore tuna, sea salt. Species are verified through independent third-party DNA testing, mercury results are tested and disclosed, and the cans are BPA-free. It costs more than StarKist, Bumble Bee, or any store brand, but the price reflects an actual verifiable supply chain, not just a label that implies one. How to check it yourself. You don't need a lab to start being a more skeptical shopper. Flip the can over before you buy it and look for 3 things: a named fishery or catch region, not wild caught, an actual place. If it's not there, the brand isn't disclosing it. Independent, third-party verification language, species testing or mercury testing that's disclosed with actual results, not just a logo or a slogan. A short ingredient list. Real, single-species tuna needs almost nothing added. If the label buries sourcing behind marketing language and a long ingredient panel, that's your signal to put it back. If the sourcing information on the back is vaguer than the branding on the front, that's the tell. Canned tuna is still one of the best value proteins on the shelf. That logic hasn't changed. It only works if what's printed on the label is actually what's inside the can. 2 brands here earned that trust. The rest are asking you to take their word for it. If this changed how you're going to shop next time you're in the tuna aisle, hit subscribe, drop a like, and send this to whoever in your life is still grabbing the same can out of habit.